Hello and welcome to Wire. In this final episode in this series, we will be looking at the Fire Regulatory Reform 2005 Order, what it means and a brief overview of its contents. This podcast only covers England and Wales and has no jurisdiction outside of these borders. This podcast covers general fire safety precautions, fire safety duties to be carried out by the relevant person in case of fire, as well as requiring fire precautions to be put in where necessary, reasonable and practicable. Fire Safety Order is a fire risk assessment based approach where the responsible person or persons for the premises must decide on how to address the risks identified while meeting certain basic requirements. If you have previously carried out a fire risk assessment under the Fire Precautions Workplace Regulations 1997 or 1999, and this assessment has been regularly reviewed, then all you will need to do now is update that assessment taking account of the wider scope of the order. Your premises may also be subject to the provisions of a licence or registration, for example under the Licensing Act 2003. In that case, the Fire Authority may wish to review your risk assessment as part of the licensing approval process. Fire safety conditions within your licence should not be set by a licensing authority where the order applies. By adopting a fire risk assessment approach, as has been mentioned in previous podcasts in this series, the responsible individual must judge the potential risks and take appropriate action where necessary to neutralise or reduce these risk factors. The Reform Order also covers the clarification of the responsible person. Briefly, it states that, in the workplace, it is the employer or owner of premises, the person who has control of the premises occupier, or where the occupier has no control over the premises, it would be the owner. The Reform Order also lays out the duties of the responsible person. This has been covered in a previous podcast and is available at www.jproservices.co.uk. The Fire Regulatory Reform Order looks at all people directly using, involved in, or in close proximity to a premises. These are relevant persons. Any person, including the responsible person, who is, or may be lawfully, on the premises, and any person in the immediate vicinity of the premises who is at risk from a fire on the premises. This may include staff, students, visitors, or members of the public on the street adjacent to the building. The responsible person should also make and give effect to such arrangements as are appropriate for the effective planning, organisation, control, monitoring and review of the preventative and protective measures and record them. The responsible person should also put in place control measures, such as avoiding sources of ignition, and mitigation procedures such as keeping number of persons exposed to a minimum for fire safety, which this reform order looks at in grave detail. The report also covers the detailed legislation relating to the responsible person. For example, the order discusses staff training. To avoid repetition, please see our podcast about staff fire safety training. However, the report does outline some yet uncovered information about an employee's role in fire safety. An employee should A. Take reasonable care for the safety of himself and of other relevant persons who may be affected by his acts or omissions at work. B. Cooperate with his employer to enable any duty or responsibility imposed by this order to be performed or complied with. And C. Inform his employer of any work situation which a person would reasonably consider represented a serious and immediate danger to safety. Please note, there is often disparity between the interpretation of the British standards and the comparative interpretation of the 2005 order. Often, a fire officer from the local brigade will be well versed in the order, but this can conflict with more detailed information and advice given in a specific British standard. As although the order is quite comprehensive, the British standards go into far more detail about specific sections. Therefore, this can create differences between the perceived action needed if a decision is based solely on one document or the other. When used in conjunction, these documents are at their most effective, enabling more comprehensive decisions to be made, ensuring all bases and regulation is covered. To sum up then, the Fire Regulatory Reform 2005 Order is an incredibly useful document for ensuring your premises is fire regulation compliant. However, it is not all-encompassing. The order, in conjunction with the British standards, is the best way to make any decisions about how to conform. If you would like any further advice, please visit us at www.jproservices.co.uk. as we want you to be safe in our hands.